Hello fellow travelers, my name's SG, and welcome to the channel. Today we'll be doing Allegory of the Cave by Plato. This has been a piece that has been debated by philosophers and scholars throughout history, and I just wanted to read it to you guys now. This is taking place in a conversation between Socrates and Plato's brother, Glaucon, about an idea Socrates has. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's get started. Socrates. And now allow me to draw a comparison in order to understand the effect of learning, or the lack thereof, upon our nature. Imagine that there are people living in a cave deep underground, and the cavern has a mouth that opens up to the light above, and passage exists from this all the way down to the people. They have lived here from infancy, and with their legs and necks bound in chains, they cannot move. All they can do is stare directly forward. As the chains stop them from turning their heads around, imagine that far above and behind them blazes a great fire. Between this fire and the captives, a low partition is erected along a path, something like puppeteers use to conceal themselves during their shows. Glaucon. I can picture it. Socrates. Look, and you will also see other people carrying objects back and forth along the partition, things of every kind. Images of people and animals carved in the stone and wood and other materials. Some of these other people speak, while others remain silent. Glaucon. A bizarre situation for some unusual captives. Socrates. So we are. Now tell me, if you suppose it's possible for these captives ever saw anything of themselves or one another, other than the shadows fitting across the cavern wall before them. Glaucon. Certainly not, for they are restrained all their lives with their heads facing forward only. Socrates. And that would be just as true for the objects moving to and fro behind them. Glaucon. Certainly. Socrates. Now, if they could speak, would you say that these captives would imagine that the names they give to the things they were able to see apply to the real thing? Socrates. And if a sound reverberated through their cave from one of the other passing behind the partition, do you suppose that the captives would think anything but the passing shadow was that really made the sound? Glaucon. No, by Zeus. Socrates. Then, undoubtedly, such captives would consider the truth to be nothing but the shadows of the carved objects. Glaucon. Most certainly. Socrates. Look again and think about what would happen if they were released from their chains, and these misconceptions. Imagine one of them is set free from his shackles and immediately made to stand up and bend his neck around it, to step outside, to take steps, to gaze up toward the fire, and all of these painful, and the glare from the light made him unable to see the objects and cast the shadows he once beheld. What do you think his reaction would be if someone informed him that everything he had formerly known was an illusion and delusion, but that now he has few steps closer to reality, oriented now toward things that were more aesthetic and able to see more truly, and even further, if he only directed his attention to the artificial figures passing to and fro and asked him what their names are, would this man not be at loss to do so? Would he rather believe that the shadow he formerly knew were more real than the objects known now being shown to him? Glaucon. Much more real. Socrates. Now, if he was forced to look directly at the fire, wouldn't his eyes be pained? Wouldn't he turn away and run back to those things which he normally perceived and understood them as more defined and clearer than the things now being brought to his attention? Glaucon. That's right. Socrates. Now let's say that he is forcibly dragged up the steep climb of the cavern and firmly held until finally he stands in the light of the sun. Don't you think that he would be agitated and even begin to complain? Under the light, would his eyes not be nearly blinded, unable to discern any of those things that we ourselves call real? Glaucon. No, he wouldn't see them at first. Socrates. It would take time, I suppose, for him to get used to seeing higher things. In the beginning he might only trace the shadows, then reflections of people and other things in the water, Next he would come to see things themselves. Then he would behold the heavenly bodies and the heaven itself by night, and seeing the light of the stars and the moon with greater ease than the sun and its light by day. Glaucon. Indeed so. Socrates. And then I think he would at last be able to gaze upon the sun itself, neither as reflected in water nor as a phantom image in some other place, but in his own place as it really is. Glaucon. Undeniably. Socrates. And now he will begin to reason. He will find that the sun is the source of seasons and the years, and governor of every visible thing, and is ultimately the origin of everything previously known. Glaucon. Of course, first he would see them and then draw conclusions. Socrates. That being the case, should he remember his fellow prisoners and their original dwelling, what was accepted as wisdom in that setting, don't you imagine it would consider him fortunate for this transformation and feel pity for the captives? Glaucon. I agree. Socrates. Now, suppose there were honors and awards among the captives, which they granted as prize to one another for being the best at recognizing the various shadows, passing by and deciphering their patterns, their order, and the relationships among them, and therefore best at predicting what shadows would be seen next. Do you believe that our liberated man would be much concerned with such honors, or that he would be jealous of those who receive them, or that he would strive to be like those who were lauded by the captives and enjoyed pride of place among them, or would rather take Homer's view and rather wish in earthly life to be humbled serf of a landless man, and suffer wherever he had to, instead of holding the views of the captives and returning to the state of being? Glaucon. Truly, he would rather suffer a great deal than return to such a life. Socrates. Well, here's something else to consider. If such a man would suddenly go from sunlight to once more descend to his original circumstances, wouldn't his vision be obscured by the darkness? Glaucon. It obviously would. Socrates. And so, let's say he is with the captives and gets put in the position of interpreting the wall shadows. His eyes are still adjusting to the darkness, and it may take a while before they are. Wouldn't he become a laughingstock? Wouldn't they say, "You have returned from your adventure up there with ruined eyes"? Would they not say that the ascent was a waste of time? And if they had the opportunity, do you suppose that they might raise their hands against him and kill the person who was trying to liberate them to a higher plane? Glaucon. I'm afraid so. Socrates. Then, my friend Glaucon, this image applies to everything we've been discussing. It compares the visual world to the underground cavern, and the power of the sun to the fire that burned in the cavern. You won't misunderstand me if you connect the captive's ascent to be the ascent of the soul to the intelligible world. This is how I believe, and I shared it at your wish. Though heaven knows whether it is all true, regardless, it appears to me that in the realm of what we can be known, the idea of the good is discovered last of all, and it only perceived with a great difficulty. But when it is seen, it leads us directly to the finding that it is the universal cause of all that is right and beautiful. It is the source of visible light and the master of the same. And in the intelligible world, it is the master of truth and reason, and whoever in private or in public would behave in a sensible way will keep this idea in focus. Glaucon. I agree to the extent I can manage to understand. Socrates. Stay with me then, for another thought. We should not be surprised that the individuals who had reached this level might be unwilling to spend their time on mundane affairs, for would it not be that their souls always feel a calling to the higher things? If our illustration holds true, that would seem quite likely. Glaucon. Yes, likely indeed. Socrates. Now, would it be at all surprising for one who has been engaged in the contemplation of the holy things, when he ventures into the way of degenerate humanity, to appear ridiculous in his actions? What if, For example, while his eyes were still adjusting to the mundane gloom, he would be forced to appear in court to hold forth about the mere shadows of justice, or the other shapes that flitted across the wall, and to engage in debate about such concepts with the minds of others who has never beheld the ideal of justice. Glaucon. It would not surprise me the least. Socrates. But one who has its wits about him would remember that there are two things that pain the eyes: being brought from darkness to light, and transitioning back from light to darkness. Now, experience that the soul experiences the same discomfort. This man would not make light of another when he met with the confused soul. He would take the time to understand if the soul was coming from a luminous realm, and his eyes were blinded by darkness, or whether journeying from the darkness of ignorance into the illuminated state had overwhelmed his eyes. 1. He would consider fortunate. He would pity the other, and if he laughed at either, it would be less justified if he laughed at the expense of the one who is descending from the light above. Glaucon. That's a fitting way to put it. Socrates. Of course, if I'm correct, then some of our educators are mistaken in their view that it is possible to implement knowledge into a person that wasn't there originally, like vision into the eyes of a blind man. Glaucon. That's what they say. Socrates. What our message now signifies is that the ability and means of learning is already present in the soul, and the eye could not turn from darkness to light unless the whole body moved. So, it is that the mind can only turn around from the world of becoming to that of a being by the movement of the whole soul. The soul must learn by degrees, to degree the contemplation of being and the illuminous realm. This is the good. Agreed? Glaucon. Agreed. Socrates. Therefore, of this matter itself, there must be a craft of some kind, which would be the most efficient and effective means of transforming the soul. It would not be an art that gives the soul vision, but a craft of labor under the assumption that the soul has its own innate vision, but does not apply it properly. There must be some kind of means for bringing this about. Glaucon. Yes, such a craft must exist. Now that we've read the proverb, let's talk about it, shall we? This one has a simple meaning, yet a very debated meaning. This has meant something to a lot of different people. Some have said that it is our ability to figure out what's real and what's not, to be able to judge between reality and fantasy. Some have said it's about knowledge, about being able to gain it and not being able to look at things the same way as we have before. But those are their opinions. This one is just mine. You might have a different opinion, and I would like to hear it. If you do, please leave in a comment down below. But if I had to say what my opinion about this was, I would have to say that this is about experience. This is about not knowledge, but about living. This proverb feels like it's not necessarily talking about knowledge, but it's not talking about knowledge. This is talking about being able to leave the you who is right now, being able to venture out into the world and experiencing life, experiencing things the way they are around you. Like you said, it's about like how you may be stuck in a cave right now, but once you leave that cave, once you look at the world around, it's frightening. It's hard. Life is hard. But it's about being able to grow, being able to learn, being able to appreciate the things around you from that point. Yeah, we can have this whole debate about knowledge or not, but this is about wanting to grow in life. And then at the end he says, would you be able to go back to the cave? Or would you be able to do anything if you had to go, like, be forced to back in the cave? And the answer is no. Because after a while, you're not the same person who was sitting in that cave. You're somebody new. You're somebody better. You're not the same person you were last year. You've learned, you lived, and you are now somebody that has adjusted to the world around you. And then thinking back to the you that was there, what would you do with the you that was there? Would you reward him? Would you talk to him? What would you do? You wouldn't be able to go back. You might be mocked by those that you knew, by the ones that just wanted to stay in their position of watching those paintings on the cave. But you feel no hate for them. You might pity them. You might want to help them. But you know you're not one of them anymore. You are someone above them. Not because you're smarter, but because you've lived and experienced something they haven't. Because you are now not one of them. You are you. You have become the you later on. And that's something that I think all of us go through at one point, yeah? Becoming who we are meant to be, or experiencing something we don't really understand, but growing to accept. Alright, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, this is just my opinion on the proverb. If you have your own, leave them down in the comments. Thank you all for the past views of the latest videos I've done, and for subscribing if you have. If you haven't, please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. If you didn't, then come back Wednesday or next week and we'll have something different. Thank you and have a great day.